Alibaba was just hit with a big $2.8 billion fine by the Chinese government for monopolistic practices. There has been a whole saga with the Chinese Communist Party over the past several months with Alibaba stock that has caused a massive decline in the stock and the company's valuation. However, I'm going to explain exactly why this is the moment, the perfect time to buy Alibaba stock. I'm going to explain exactly why with a technical and fundamental analysis, and I'm going to give you the whole story behind the fine and all the controversy with the CCP in a brief overview. This all started around October 2020 when Ant Financial reported to prepare for an IPO that was around $300 billion, the biggest IPO of all time. Basically, at that time, they were planning to raise around $34 billion in cash by listing on the Shanghai and Hong Kong exchanges in China. All right. And of course, Alibaba is a big shareholder in Ant Financial. It was spun off of the company. They own about 30%. So if it had a $300 billion valuation for Ant Financial, that would be about $100 billion stake for Alibaba. Pretty large size, right? Considering Alibaba itself trading here today is around $600 billion total. However, fast forward a couple of weeks when they were about to IPO fairly soon, Jack Ma did the most uncommunist thing for China, and that is to speak out against the banking system in China and how it's basically like a fossil and a pawn shop mentality. They don't promote innovation and stuff like that. That did not sit well with the government at all, and this IPO was halted, and later on, the government put out basically a couple of statements, and they had meetings with Jack Ma and other Alibaba executives and Ant people, and essentially the government basically said that Ant Financial engages in some illegal activities. So Ant Financial is being forced to really rein in on their growth, their business practices. This valuation that was once $300+ billion is probably at best half of that right now. So as a result, Alibaba itself is essentially kind of like taking a hit because their once $100 billion stake is now more like $50 billion or maybe even $30 billion, who knows, when Ant Financial is actually going to go public someday. There are updates, since January. They're saying if Ant Financial changes its business model, kind of reins in on those practices, it could IPO. And as recent as March, there are executives in Ant that say that they still believe that it is going to IPO. So that remains to be seen. Nevertheless, that is just one part of Alibaba. Out of a $600 billion behemoth, Alibaba is much more than Ant Financial. They have a really booming, large Chinese e-commerce business. They have cloud, which is, I believe, the fourth largest company market share in the entire world. They have other parts of their business that's highly diversified. So fintech in Ant is just one part of the company. Nevertheless, people are wrapped up in the controversy. They're wrapped up in, oh my God, what's the government going to do to Alibaba? Are they going to start, abducting more people? Jack Ma has already been missing. He did resurface once in January to do a video, but besides that, he's been out of the scenes. But, keep in mind that Jack Ma is no longer the chairman or the CEO of Alibaba. That man, the main man at Alibaba now is Daniel Zhang. So he's kind of just trying to put out the fire here. He's putting out statements. Joe Tsai and Maggie Wu, who's also in the executive suite, they've been trying to put out statements as well. With this fine, the $2.8 billion fine, that is kind of seen as some sort of closure here, with China trying to rein in these tech companies. They've been putting out regulations. The Chinese government has really been trying to push a lot more regulation on these big tech companies, kind of similar to the United States, really. You want companies to have fair practices, competition in the space, good for consumers, right? So, these are kind of basic things that are really only starting to just be introduced in China. The government has put fines on Alibaba and Tencent in the past as well, but on a much smaller scale, around $500,000, I believe. Really negligible, not material. Even this $2.8 billion fine, it sounds bad, right? So let's get into this. $2.8 billion is a lot of money, right? But at the end of the day, if you look at Baba's balance sheet, for example, they have $70 billion in cash, right? $2.8 billion is kind of nothing to them. That's not even 5% of their cash balance, and that's of their latest quarter that they reported. So it's not a whole lot of money, and maybe the Chinese government is going to be appeased now because they're getting that money from Alibaba. You kind of scare them a little bit, try to get them to change some practices. So they are going to change some things related to this choose one system that they had for Alibaba. So on Baba's part, they respond by saying that their company is not really anti-competition exactly. It's only a small handful of e-commerce partners. They have to, they have exclusivity over them, so they only can sell on Alibaba. They can't put their products on JD.com. They can't put their products on PDD. And that's going to change. They're going to try to lower some prices on those specific merchants to keep them around. But overall, they're saying, according to this conference call that was released after this fine, this is not going to have any material impact on the company, meaning next quarter's revenue or a year later, the revenue, it's barely going to change because of these business changes, because of the regulations. So that is really good news, actually. So it sounds like bad news, but it's really closure, and it's really not that bad for the company. At the end of the day, all that matters is the fundamentals in the long term, right? If these regulations all of a sudden cut Baba's revenue by 10%, 20%, 30%, then we're talking about something else. But in this sort of situation, it's kind of like, people are selling because of the rumor, but when the news comes out, I think they're going to buy. And when you look at Hong Kong, right, Baba is listed on there as well, 9988. You're going to see right here, their shares in Hong Kong are actually going up on this news. Okay, it sounds contradictory again, but when you think about it, people love certainty, okay? They don't love, who knows what the government is going to do. Are they going to fine 5 billion? Are they going to fine 10 billion? Are they going to make Baba, divest some, a big part of their business? They can't do cloud anymore, then that's something else, right? But this is actually pretty decent news. And when you go back to Baba's fundamentals, at the end of the day, right, 37% growth in the past quarter. This company is growing faster than Facebook. It's growing faster than Apple. It's growing faster than Microsoft. It's growing faster than a lot of the major big tech companies in the United States. And one of the fastest growing large companies in the entire world, right? $600 billion company that's gone from 300 per share to like 200 per share basically at this point, right? And 220 I see as a really good floor. And we'll talk about the technical aspect in just a moment. But the last thing on the valuation here, forward PE of 19 on a 600 billion big tech company growing like crazy. Cloud, by the way, their cloud segment, it's only 8% of the company right now, but it's growing 50% a year. That's going to grow for time and time again to come, right? And like I said earlier, one of the biggest in the cloud space in the entire world as far as market share, just behind Amazon, Microsoft, Google, those type of companies. But a forward P of 19 is very low, right? You look at those other companies that I just talked about, the other big tech companies, they're trading at forward PEs. The lowest is Facebook around 23. You have some of them trading at 30, 40, 50, right? Like an Amazon. That's a lot more expensive than a Baba stock. And if you just give this company a fair valuation in the coming year, so right now it's trading at a 25 trailing PE, 19 forward PE, right? Even if it just stays at a 25 PE next year, we take that 25 PE, you take next year's earnings estimate, which is around $12, and really these companies beat these estimates constantly. You just look at other companies like Facebook, Google, etc. All the tech companies beat it handily, but let's just say a 12 EPS, you multiply it by 25 and you get a price target of 300. So in the most conservative of estimates here, you have a price target of 300 and the stock right now is around 220. If you even just give this company a little bit more credit, like let's say it's going to beat those estimates by 10%, you're looking at a $14 EPS, you multiply it by 25, and that's a $350 price target, guys. $350. Okay? You know, it's trading at a really ridiculous discount at this point. And keep in mind, guys, these estimates have nothing to do with Ant Financial even, right? I could totally write off Ant Financial from Baba, right? The entire company. And at the end of the day, this is still undervalued. It has a ton of earnings, has a ton of cash, it has a ton of business, a lot of different diversification. The valuation, it just makes total sense here. And no, don't even bring up Baba being delisted because it's not happening, all right? There's no chance. There's no chance. And lastly, when we just look at the technical aspects a little bit here, the RSI is already really low. You know, you look at the past several months of trading, 220 is a really good floor. Over the past month, it's kind of built a sort of a double bottom here around 220. It's never really traded that much lower since that initial big drop that it had. You know, when Jack Ma was, you know, missing and all that, you know, random BS stuff that has nothing to do with the company itself. The high in the past was 300, right? I think this is really setting up for a double bottom, a really big, kind of a medium term W right here. And I really like Baba stock here, guys. Fundamentals check out, the technicals check out. The news is out, there's more certainty, and I think it's time for this beaten down beast of Baba to rise once again. So if you're with me, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear it. I am planning to buy some shares as soon as Monday right here. So we'll see how it goes. Until next time, my friends, stay well and invest responsibly.